BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Hello and welcome to the Farming Today podcast with me, Charlotte Smith. In this episode, accelerated planning for new reservoirs.
For them to speed it up isn't a very clever move. I think there's so many questions that need to be answered. There's so many things that need to look into.
More on that later, but let's start with national parks, which we're talking about all week here on Farming Today. There has been much debate over the past few years about the state of nature in the parks and how it can be improved while also supporting farming. Today we're focusing on Pembrokeshire, which has many farms inside the national park. A nature recovery project was launched 2 years ago with the aim of enhancing biodiversity on farmland by the coast. Mary-Claire Carey-Jones has been speaking to those involved.
This coastal slope is botanically really diverse. We've got spring squill, bluebells, we've got thrift, and we've also got the incredibly rare pale dog violet. My name's Claire Flynn and I'm a conservation officer in the conservation team at Pembrokeshire Coast National Park. Connecting the Coast was developed as a sort of mini agri-environment scheme. So the aims of the project were to work with local farmers to make a bit of space for nature within their productive farming systems and to kind of buffer the wildlife back into the farms.
And how did the project go about doing that?
So we had funding from Welsh Government and we used that funding to offer farmers and other landowners a mix of capital grants, which might pay for fencing for conservation grazing or putting in ponds or gapping up hedgerows, etc. Lots of different things. But also we were able to offer farmers management agreements on coastal pastures to perhaps tweak their grazing practices or change management practice, for example, restoring old hay meadows.
Hi, I'm Rob Johns and I live here on Llanferren Farm and I farm it with my brother and we've lived here all our lives.
And the location of your farm is incredible. I'm standing in front of the sea, which looks amazing, and then behind me are mountains and fields and fields. So why did you want to be part of the Connecting the Coast project?
Well, it was just extending what I've been trying to do here for a long time is get the coastal belt back to what I consider it should be. You know, over the years, gorse became more prevalent. And basically I'm trying to get rid of some of the gorse to allow other plants to grow and make room for the birds and things.
But how do you balance the needs of wildlife and the needs of running a commercial farm?
The fields which we've got a management agreement with the National Park, they are fields which we haven't cultivated them since the 1980s because it's very rocky. Now that we've got them fenced off better, which was a part of the grant scheme, we can graze those more in the winter time, and during the summer months they're not grazed.
Does that have an impact on you financially?
Not really, because we're getting paid by the National Park for keeping them in that state.
And as we're standing here, there's some birds flying overhead. They're choughs?
Yeah, those are choughs. And farms like Rob's and those sorts of coastal pastures are absolutely essential for their feeding.
But how difficult is it for you managing a national park for wildlife, but also for the tourists that are using the coastal path and the farmers that are farming here?
It's really difficult with high visitor numbers and farming and the pressures on farmers. Building resilience in the landscape is what we have to do. Working alongside our landowners and building those relationships is key.
That report from Mary-Claire Carey-Jones. Golden eagles have been extinct in England since 2015, when a solitary bird died in the Lake District. But could that be about to change? Well, a conservation project in the south of Scotland, which began in 2018, has seen a huge increase in the eagle population there, and some of those birds have begun exploring places like Northumberland, the North Pennines, the Lake District, even Lancashire and North Yorkshire, although as yet none of them has stayed to nest. Joe Lonsdale has been to meet wildlife enthusiast Ian Glendinning, who spotted an eagle in a remote corner of the Northumberland National Park just a few weeks ago.
So we needed a 4x4 to get here because we're in a pretty remote part of Northumberland. We're not saying exactly where, just to protect the bird, but Ian, tell us a little bit about the moment when you spotted the golden eagle.
Yeah, well, it was a total surprise. We came round a corner, a blind bend, next to some rocky outcrops, and there it was, just sitting on the end of the crag, and it opened its wings and glided away behind the outcrop, and away it went.
Now, you see a lot of buzzards around here. We've even seen a red kite on the way up. How did you know it was a golden eagle?
Just the sheer size of it.
Ian was right. It was a golden eagle, and he has a name, Tala. We know this from the South of Scotland Golden Eagle Project, which has translocated birds to the Scottish borders from the Highlands, and satellite tagging means they know where they are. The population in that area has risen from a handful to around 50. And as the project manager, Dr. Kat Barlow, explains, some of them have begun exploring northern England.
They're looking for new eagles, they're looking to see where are good feeding areas and so forth. They kind of create a visual map, and then when they're ready, they will settle on a territory and try and attract a mate. So in that kind of exploration phase, the birds will just wander and they'll go where looks interesting.
So I've driven now to one of the places where the Northumberland Wildlife Trust would just love to see golden eagles one day. I'm in the Simonside Hills, part of the Rothbury estate, recently acquired by the charity, surrounded by rolling hills, lots of sheep, and I've come here to meet the charity's CEO, Mike Pratt.
They're such an iconic species, and in a sense they should be here. So it's really sort of a good indication of what is possible if we treat the countryside and their habitat right, and they will come back.
Golden eagles predate on grouse. The shooting industry is an important part of the Northumberland economy. Might that be a problem?
I don't think, though, across the whole of Scotland that is an issue. And they're great to see in the sky. Great for the economy as well. People come to see them. You can see them up in the air now, couldn't you? Just overhead. It would be absolutely amazing.
Mike Pratt from the Northumberland Wildlife Trust. 2 proposed reservoirs have been given nationally significant status by the government to speed up the planning process. Decisions on the Lincolnshire Reservoir, which is planned for an area near Sleaford, and the Fens Reservoir, planned for an area near March in Cambridgeshire, will now be accelerated. Ministers say the law will also be changed so that in the future all projects which, as they put it, are fundamental to national water resilience will automatically be designated as nationally significant. As we've been reporting, concerns about water supply for agriculture have been growing, this year in particular as it's been so dry. But these reservoirs, which won't be finished for more than a decade, are aimed at providing water for houses. The Fen Reservoir is expected to benefit 250,000 homes. Kate Moser-Andon is political reporter for the BBC in Cambridgeshire and says decisions on the reservoir had already been taken away from local councils.
It's such a significant project that it's being looked at by the Planning Inspectorate, and at the moment it's in what's called a pre-application stage. So the actual application isn't expected to be submitted until about February 2027 by Anglian Water and Cambridge Water, who are behind it. So this announcement from the government is a kind of confidence boost in the project and a sign that they will be looking at this as a priority.
Has there been opposition to this plan? Because obviously it will flood a lot of land.
In the Fens, it is this hugely agriculturally productive region. In fact, a third of England's fresh vegetables are grown right here in Fenland. And there have been concerns raised among local farmers to do with the potential impact on the amount of land needed for this reservoir and the infrastructure around it. There's also been concerns about the amount of land that will be used for recreation and leisure facilities, which is potentially a boost to the economy, but also has led to concerns about kind of what impact this will have on this very much rural and agriculturally productive landscape.
Water has become a big issue for farmers, both too much of it and then not enough of it. Is there any expectation that there will be a benefit to them from the reservoir?
We have a bit of a sort of confusing situation in East Anglia, which is a hugely water-stressed region. But actually, in the winter especially, there can be problems with flooding. So one of the potential benefits of the reservoir is that in times when water levels are very high, this water could be fed into the reservoir and then eventually supply homes. There's also a huge amount of energy and investment that goes into managing water levels vegetables in the fens. Anything that can help with preventing flooding in this farmland area is potentially going to help.
BBC reporter Kate Moser-Andon. Well, in Lincolnshire, around 5 square kilometres near Sleaford will be flooded for the reservoir. Some locals have been fighting the plans for years. Hannah Thorogood is an organic beef, sheep and turkey farmer who stands to lose both the land she owns and the land she rents.
The proposed reservoir would wipe us out completely. So our home, our farm, everything would be gone.
What would that mean for you? Would you be able to set up somewhere else?
It would be heartbreaking. It's no word of a lie when you say, it's your life's work. It's everything that you've put all your energy, all your money, all of your dreams into, and for absolutely nothing if this goes ahead.
When did you first hear about these plans?
We heard about it in September 22, I believe. It's all a bit of a blur now because it's been going on for so long. And a letter came through from Anglian Water, just like any other letter. And I can remember seeing this letter and thinking, well, that's strange. I've paid my bill. And I opened it up and it was worded as if we'd won some sort of competition. And it said, your site has been selected. Oh, crikey, what we've been selected for a proposed reservoir. And it felt like a ton of bricks landing on your head because you just think it must be some kind of joke. Because apart from anything, we're on a hill, so we're not in a valley. And so what Anglian Water are proposing is to dig down 30 metres below us and for 4,500 acres around us and to scrape all of that soil back to form the banks of a reservoir. It's the most expensive way of storing water.
And yet, as the government is pointing out, we really need more reservoirs in England. And so they're saying that they now want this whole process to be accelerated.
Now, we absolutely need better water resilience across the country. That makes total sense. And, just a few villages away, we have the blue pipe coming down through Lincolnshire, through Cambridgeshire, across the country to set up an effective national grid of water, which makes total sense. However, that brings up the question of why on earth would they put a reservoir in this location here when there are so many valleys with maybe one house or no houses across great swathes of the country.
Now that the government wants this whole process to go more quickly, do you think this is basically a done deal, come what may?
I've never thought this was a done deal. I think when you look into the actual specifics of the design of this reservoir, it's fundamentally flawed in so many ways. Although it's absolutely hideous for us involved in it to have this hanging over our heads for so long, because currently we wouldn't be getting a decision until 2030. And so it's an unbelievably stressful way to live your life and run your farm when you obviously have no idea whether, whatever's going to happen. Can you plant the trees? Can you fix the fences? Can you build the barns? All of those questions that we all do all the time as farmers. Everything is on pause for all of us here. But I think for them to speed it up isn't a very clever move. I think there's so many questions that need to be answered. There's so many things that need to look into.
Hannah Thorogood. Anglian Water told us, we agree that the planning process should be expedited for various reasons, not least because we understand that our proposals will have an effect on landowners and the nearby community. We're committed to working with everyone as the project develops and gave careful consideration of the size and quality of agricultural land and potential impacts in the site selection process. Inevitably, major infrastructure of this scale is going to have an impact. This is a once-in-a-generation opportunity to deliver lasting benefits for people, place and the environment. And that's it from us. I'm Charlotte Smith. The producer is Rebecca Rooney and Farming Today is a BBC Audio Bristol production.